On this week's episode, we sit down with Dylan Elias. Dylan grew up in Halifax and excelled at athletics from a young age. In high school, he turned his focus to football and went on to play for Mount Allison University. Soon after, he spent time working and living in New York City and eventually found his way to Fort McMurray. He worked security for a few years before getting hired on as part of a youth mentorship program. From there, Dylan saw an opportunity to make a real difference and has since co-founded Northern Elite Football, as well as become president of the Fort McMurray Ravens Football Club. But that's not all. His full-time job is Youth Mentorship Coordinator at Fort McKay First Nation, a job he holds very close to his heart. Listen in as we hear Dylan's story.
I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues.
All right, and we're back for another episode of Brand New View. I'm here with my co-host Ben. How you doing, Ben?
Very best, thank you. And yourself, Mark?
I'm great, thank you very much. We are joined all the way from Fort McMurray by Dylan Elias. How you doing, Dylan?
Good. What's up, guys?
Not much, just hanging out over on the other side of the country, but happy to have you on.
Hey, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Dylan's joining us from Fort McMurray, everyone.
Fort McMurray just got some warm weather. It was, we had the coldest winter, the coldest February in 40 years.
Really?
So there's a stat for you.
Is that Fort McMurray or all of Alberta?
Fort McMurray.
So you're over there now, but you did start where we are over in Halifax.
That's true. Born and raised Nova Scotia.
Born and raised, another West Ender. Happy to have you. Good to see you.
Yep, that's right. We attended the same schools throughout our elementary, junior high, and high school.
Yeah, all the way up.
All the way,
until
yeah.
University. How'd you find growing up in Halifax, specifically West End, or not specifically? I mean, you can talk about it as much as you want.
Yeah, no, I feel like your listeners are tired of hearing how awesome Halifax is, but I think I've lived around a lot, so I've definitely gained some perspective on the benefits of Halifax. It really is a small, big city. You get all the perks of a big city in a small city. I think that was the biggest thing that I learned. Like I lived in Vancouver, I lived in Toronto, Ottawa. And, really just being able to walk everywhere and kind of having a little bit of a small hometown vibe, but with everything that you get in those other places. So, yeah, Halifax is always going to have my heart, whether I come back or not.
Yeah,
Well said.
Honestly, that's a perfect way to describe it. We're not too big where we've kind of lost our character, and we're not too small where we still feel connected.
A lot of history, and as you said, very accessible. You can walk pretty much everywhere. I mean, everything is within 10, 15 minutes, which is rare to find in a big city, but at the same time, it's not so big that it's overwhelming like a Toronto or Vancouver.
Yeah, or Montreal. Absolutely. So what did you get up to growing up?
What did I get to? You know.
I know. Played a little soccer.
Yeah, sports. I guess sports was always a big one. I feel like we spent a lot of time outdoors. A lot of my childhood memories, and I don't even know how accurate my memories are at this point, but from what I remember, we were outside a lot.
Big time.
Yeah, it was I was never good at video games. I don't know if I didn't like them because I wasn't good, or I wasn't good because I didn't like them, but whatever happened, I never got into the whole video game movies. I really just spent all my childhood outside, which is something I feel like is a little bit lacking with today's kids. I know that's kind of getting overplayed too, like get off the video games, but there's a truth in it too.
So, as we mentioned, grew up with me in Halifax. We played on the same soccer team.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, a bunch of different school sports, but now football is a main focus in your life. When did you get into football?
I guess I was 11 years old. Started playing football for the Halifax Argos. Shout out. Um,
Argos.
and yeah, I don't know why I was drawn to football because I mean, yeah, like I said, like I think we played every sport like at the beginning and then, it kind of whittles down into more of a focus the older you get. I don't know. I think it was really, this is my plug for football. I think it's really the ultimate team sport. And that was the cool part I felt about it. Like you get the tall kids, you get the short kids, you get the fat kids, you get the skinny kids. There's a place for everyone. You don't, not that other sports are, but soccer, hockey, these are smaller teams where you got like 15 to 17 players on a team. Football, you got a family of like 45, other people. And
It's
Very
a lot different
inclusive.
because they're inclusive and it's really the one sport where you're just required for your one role, which is why it's so inclusive, as opposed to hockey. A forward's got to come back on defense. Every
Right.
other sport, if a forward plays defense, he plays forwards. So there's that
Totally.
advantage to it.
And I also felt there was a difference between the actual game itself. The game was such an event. I mean, one football game takes so much out of your body. You can only physically play once a week, whereas soccer, hockey, sometimes you end up, you know, 2 games every other day.
Remember the
And
tournaments we played? We played 3
yeah,
games in a
tournaments
day.
you can play. Yeah, tournaments you can go all weekend, and that's not that it takes away from it, but even just watching sports, like if there's a basketball game on every other night, you don't feel the same passion as when it's Sunday. It's like this is the day you've waited all week for this. It's just different. It's a different feeling. And anyways,
That's
whatever it was, that's what I was drawn to.
Really good perspective. I mean, it is an event, and I mean, it is very inclusive from a family perspective. I mean, 45 to 60 athletes all coming together, all different shapes. It's really cool.
and that means a massive coaching staff too.
Yeah, that's the other thing, and that gives you a chance to kind of relate with, this coach might not really fit with what, you buy into, but this coach does, and you have your positional coaches. And the other great thing about football too, I think, is just accessibility. I mean, hockey, like I always wanted to play hockey. I couldn't really, my dad played hockey. I couldn't afford to play hockey. But football, you don't have to buy your equipment. Football, the team owns the equipment, so you pay your fee. Even soccer, I find, was getting too expensive. We all of a sudden had to have like team tracksuits and bags, and like
Right.
I think football always was maybe targeted at a lower income um, demographic. So I just found any kid could play football, where other sports became a little elitist. I think that last year I played soccer. Was it provincials? I don't know, maybe under 16 or something. But yeah, it just became way too like all I need. I have my cleats. Come on, like why do I need all this other stuff? Like
You need your $200 cleats. You need to get your Diodora tracksuit. We
yeah,
got to go on this trip to PEI and this trip to New Brunswick because we have to prepare for provincials or whatever. And it's like, all right, I don't think we need to be spending all this money to prepare these kids for whatever this is.
it got a little crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's competitive nature. You see it in all sorts of amateur sports growing up.
Totally. And yeah, I guess it wasn't until high school that I really just decided like, okay, this is gonna be, because I had been doing karate, like Shotokai, from an early age. I think I started when I was 6. Um, I had like pretty big success there. I think I got my black belt when I was like 15.
That's
And
awesome.
then we played soccer and basketball, and yeah, at high school it just became like too much. I really just wanted to focus, and yeah, whatever it was, football was it.
What were you kind of interested in academically in high school?
Uh, that's a really good question. Nothing. I
Same.
I I was more drawn to the Englishes over the maths. I was never good at math or science, but I never really loved school, which is another point I'd like to touch on. Um, I was actually diagnosed with ADHD at a later stage of my life, which gave me a lot of perspective on what was happening in high school. I didn't enjoy school because I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy school because I couldn't learn and I couldn't operate in the classroom the same way. So that deterred me from wanting to pursue further academics. And that was tough for me because you kind of understand that you don't understand, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, I knew that had a problem, but I
Mhm.
just couldn't like put my finger on it. So I did struggle a lot in things I didn't understand or things I did understand. So it was hard for me to understand why I couldn't understand or why I couldn't perform certain tasks. So yeah, it was a lot later that that all that kind of got solved for me. And I think once you get an official diagnosis and then they break it down for you, and then they're like, oh, so you would probably have struggle with this or this, and you would probably have problems in this area, and they're explaining your whole life. And I'm like, man, if someone in high school would have just like figured this out, it would have made the world a difference. So, yes, I think that's why I was more drawn to athletics. I really felt like I underperformed in the classroom, and that ends up making you feel like I felt stupid in class because I could look around and see other people understanding things that I wasn't understanding. But at that time in your life, you're not always bold enough to stand up and say, "Hey, I don't get it," when the rest of the class has already moved on. So you just kind of shut up and go about your business, and that results in low grades, which also takes another hit on you. And so anyways, athletics was where I stood out, so I think that's why I kind of was always drawn more to that. And I think this is the case for a lot of kids.
I, Absolutely, you wonder how many kids are being seen as if they just don't care or don't try when it's a frustrating. I mean, I dealt with somewhat similar situation where it was just complete lack of motivation because of no direction, so there was no drive, and it's just so frustrating. You look at people like you and me, they judge and think, well, they just don't care. It's laziness. It's whatever. When it's this internal struggle where we don't want to speak out because for fear of being ostracized.
Totally. And I think like I see this a lot too with kids who I mean, I'm sure everyone who's been alive in the last 5 years has seen like these fidget spinners that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
took off. But, this is not just the fidget spinners. Like this fidget thing has been around for a while, and this really is like a brain processing tool that it can help them understand. Obviously people take advantage of it, and it was a fad for a while, like I get that. But so sometimes when you see a kid, and I worked in the school system for a long time, and I dealt with kids who experienced these problems, and not in any way discrediting our wonderful teachers who go to work every day. um, but sometimes you'll see teachers who really just don't have an understanding of how that can feel. So if a kid isn't looking at you and he's flicking his pencil around, sometimes that is his way of listening to you. But to the untrained eye, this kid isn't paying attention. He's more interested in his pencil. And it really takes a lot. That was almost part of my job, which wasn't supposed to be, but it became advocating for these kids. Like, listen, he is listening to you. This is how he listens, by not looking at you and playing with a toy, which some teachers don't always, doesn't compute, right? I think it's getting better now, but I can only imagine I made it through. Luckily, I had like good supports and a personality where I could navigate my way through the school system. But there's a lot of kids who didn't, and who still don't.
Mm. So, as you mentioned, football was really athletics as a whole, but really football was your real love, your big love in high school. Did that kind of influence your decision to what university you attended?
Yeah. So after high school, I had a pretty stellar grade 12 year, which opened up the possibility of attending university, which previous had never even been on the radar. Um, my grandmother actually, when I was born, put $200 into a fund for like a post-secondary fund, I guess. And we didn't have a ton of money growing up, and my mom also, I guess by the time I was in grade 8, had no faith that I was ever going to go to university. So she took the money out of this fund and sent me to like a YMCA summer camp. So that just gives you an idea of how far off the idea of university for me ever was. Like I said before, academics was never my strong suit. So my football coach came to me and he said, "Hey, there's a couple opportunities for you, blah, blah, blah." So I think I was contacted by Acadia, Bishops, Mount Allison, and Simon Fraser University.
Simon Fraser,
So that was
BC.
huge for me.
Shout out.
Yeah, that was huge for me. I now had a possibility of going to university, and
Before that idea came into your head that you could use football as a tool to go to university, were you even thinking about it? Like at that point when you realized that you could use that and people were interested in you going to the university, did that kind of change your perspective? Did that change the way you looked at things or at yourself potentially?
it's a great question. I don't think it really changed the way I felt about myself, because I always felt like a little bit of a phony, like I was only going because of this. I didn't necessarily have the grades to get in. They kind of helped push me through to get into school. So I never felt like I had accomplished anything. I always felt like an imposter almost on campus, like I'm not supposed to be here. If anyone finds out, I'm not actually smart. You know what I mean? Yeah, my first year of university kind of reinforced those I don't know, false ruminating thoughts, I guess, negative thoughts that I already had about myself in that way. Um, it was a ton of fun getting there, but I quickly realized like, whew, this is real work. You can't bullshit your way to this one like you can in high school. So
Yeah,
that was an
learned
eye
that the hard
opener.
way.
But yeah, definitely the prospect of me going to university. Like my mom had never gone to university, my dad had never gone to university, so I guess it was kind of cool for me to think about it in that way. Like, like I could be, you know what I mean? I could be breaking some ground here.
First for the family. That's awesome.
And also with my, I have a lot of younger brothers who are also in sports, so I thought, this could be a pave the way almost.
How many
Which
younger brothers do you have?
I
Yeah,
have 4 younger brothers, and I'm
What?
very.
You have a football team.
One is playing at Mount Allison University where I played, and he's going into his 5th year, and he's starting on defense, and he's doing awesome. He just had a kid. I'm super proud of him. Super proud of him.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Skylar?
Skylar.
There we go.
Summer Sky.
Summer Sky.
Shout
That's
out to
awesome.
Summer Sky.
So you, as you said, first year, not so great academically. How'd you fare on the football field?
Um, first year was an okay. I'll give you a funny story. I show up. I didn't know anyone. I knew one other person who was going to that school, but other than that, I didn't know anyone. And I show up because we show up before school starts. We show up for like training camp.
Right.
So I was staying in residence first year, but the res doesn't open until school opens. So you usually room with some of the older guys who have like houses on campus. So I found out who my roommate was. He was another guy on the football team. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going to stay at the same house. So he's coming from Ontario. I'm coming from Halifax. So kind of talked to him on the phone, and we make a plan to meet. Like, he decides what day he's coming, and I was like, okay, I'll meet you there. So anyways, we get there. We meet up. I get out of the car. I'm excited to meet, my roommate. And he gets out. He's like 6'2". Remember how I was talking about how I weighed maybe like 144? Well, I
Yeah.
probably weighed not much more than that at this point. So I'm like, a buck 50 wet. And anyways, he gets out. He's like 6'2", probably like 220. And I was like, oh, like, hi, I'm Dylan. Nice to meet you. And he's like, oh, hi, I'm Jared. I'm like, what position do you play? D-line? He was like, oh, no, I'm a receiver too. I'm like, oh, so you're the same position as me. Cool. You're a lot bigger than me. Anyways,
Okay.
so going into the season, he was my roommate, and he started over me, and he took my number.
Jesus.
I was number 81, so that's when I switched to number 83. But we're still best friends. I talk to him every day. So
Well, that's
we
good.
moved past that.
And were there any courses in that first year that you excelled in, or that you really
I think
enjoyed?
that's when I realized I had to stay away from maths and sciences and really steer towards Englishes. And I decided I decided my first year I was gonna major in religion, or maybe I decided that my second year. But yeah, anyways, I stick more to writing and literature than I really just don't have a brain for the other stuff.
Fair enough. Did you play all 4 years?
No, I played 3 years, and then I didn't. I had a plan to go to Carleton, so I ended up doing my fourth year classes out of Carleton, but I didn't end up playing for Carleton.
How did you transition from Mount A to Carleton? How did that all come to be?
Second and third year were great, and one of my I had an opportunity. At this point, in the CIS, there was no age limit, so I had been coming fresh out of high school, and I was playing against guys like 30, 35 years old, like they're grown ass men,
Big.
like
Yeah.
so I kind of I wanted to save almost my last 2 years, and also I was struggling academically. So I just finished my third year, and I had like minor success on the football field, but I was coming out of high school as like a stud. So I didn't really have that success again. So I was like, shoot, I'm playing against these grown ass men who've been doing steroids for freaking 10 years. I was like, what if I take a year off, get like super jacked, not on steroids, I'll clarify.
Yeah.
But what if
Of
I
course.
take a year off? Because also I wasn't really motivated by school. Like if, it could have been different if I was, killing it in my classes and loved the school part of it. But that was kind of, I was scraping by. And then, so yeah, I thought, well, what if I took a year off? My friend was moving to New York City, and he needed someone to help kind of get him down there and get set up. So he asked me if I wanted to come for the summer, and I was like, you know what, that sounds like a great idea. I moved down with my buddy James, who's this aspiring model actor, as everyone who goes to New York is. James is a dual citizen, so he's legally allowed to work there. I'm a Canadian citizen, so I'm not legally allowed to work there. So we grab an apartment with someone he knows kind of upstate. So we're taking the train into the city every day, and we're banging out some cash jobs, like, those hustling comedy tickets in Times Square, and like all that kind of riffraff you see if you've ever been to New York, or you can imagine from movies. So we were doing that for a couple months, trying to get on our feet, and I end up selling. It's called Famous New Yorker. It was like this: take a bus here, and you can eat discounted at a restaurant here. You eat at this restaurant, and you can go see the Statue of Liberty, or you can Rockefeller Center. You can do, you know what I mean? You follow the thing, and you get discounts at every. So this was the idea of it. So this guy had me selling these, and his tactics of where he wanted me to try to give out flyers was just totally like wacky. Like, he put me in the slowest parts of town at the worst times and expect me to hand out all these flyers. So I came to him with a couple ideas. I was like, listen, I think this would be better. Da, 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 da. He was like, you know what? I'll just make you the manager of my flyer distribution team. He was like, go ahead, hire 10 people. You can go find them and run this team. So I was like, okay.
Wow.
So I take this job and start working for him, having, pretty good success. And so he's like, okay, so we work out a deal with him where we're going to live in one of his spots. And so I would work full time for him, and that would cover rent. And then James could go work for Abercrombie doing like modeling, recruiting or something. He was just walking around Central Park talking to pretty girls. That was his job. So he got cash. So we'd have cash for groceries and other things. And then I would work for this guy named Michael for rent.
It's a good little system you got going on.
Yeah, it was a great system. And this guy had a spot right on 42nd and 8th. So like right in Times Square. It was a little bit of a weird place. It was like an office space that was turned into an apartment almost. But we made it work. Times are good. Things are fun. I had just come out of small town in New Brunswick, and now I'm in the big city. So I'm it feels nice, tasting life a little. And then, Michael just started, I don't know, he just, every month, I think his mental health was deteriorating, and he had me walking into big deals for him with, he'd like set up a meeting with people on like a $50,000 deal that I knew nothing about, and then he'd just call and cancel and send me in, and I had no idea what I was talking about, and I'm just trying to make things up on the spot.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Yeah, like it got really crazy, and he would call us like 2 a.m. and be like, I need to meet you like at this location in Chinatown, and then we'd go, and he'd emerge from the shadows and give us like 2 things to do and disappear again. Me and James were like, yo, what do we do? This is weird, man. So anyways, it got to a point where we had enough, and we just had to pack up one night and leave his spot, and then we moved to Brooklyn and stayed there for a little. And James was having success modeling and acting, and I felt like he was good. I felt like I had spent my time there, and then I came back to Canada, and then I moved to Vancouver.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was unreal.
That sounds like such a cool experience. I mean, even though it was a little odd at times with old Michael.
It was crazy. Like, we were really like high and low. Like, sometimes, we'd be like, he started getting into the model scene. So sometimes he'd have like, we go to these expensive model parties, like all paid for. And then some nights, Michael would set us up at a steakhouse on Fifth Avenue for a meeting. We'd be eating the most expensive steak that New York has to offer, and then the next night we're eating tuna out of the can, like in the subway station. It was wild, man. It was something else. It was a lot of fun though,
Were you training football at that time?
Yeah,
Training
I was.
for football?
I was. So I was in the gym. I joined a flag league there, which is a lot more competitive than in Canada. Just the one league I was in, that was like a mediocre league, I guess. There was 4 tiers within that league.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty good.
Very cool. And so you just mentioned you made your way out west of Vancouver.
Yeah, so then I made my way out west to Vancouver. I was still 22 at this time, so I was eligible for Canada has something called the Canadian Junior Football League, CJFL, Canadian Junior Major Football, and I got recruited by the Langley Rams. So I had 1 more year of eligibility because 22 was the cutoff, and I think I was 22. I got recruited by Langley, so I went out there and I played a year of football in Vancouver, which was awesome. Beautiful. I mean, I'd been to BC once, but it's different when you live somewhere, I encourage everyone in Canada who's listening to at least visit British Columbia, because it's really special. It's a special place.
So you were out there, played the 1 year at Langley, and then were you just out in Vancouver for a year? Or what?
Yeah. I was in I was in I was in Vancouver, and then obviously I was broke. I was ready to go back to school, or I thought I was. Um, and I got a call from our good old friend Matthew Rout, and he said he gave me an opportunity. So he was working as a student employee of Syncrude, which is a big oil site, and they get 2 bedrooms and they get a roomie. His roomie got fired, or I don't remember something, but he had a free room. So he was like, "Hey, you could come up here, do security, an easy job to get, live for 3 months, make a bunch of money, and then leave." And I was like, "Psh, that sounds great."
Yeah, why
So I went up to Fort McMurray for 3 months. For those of you who can't see my air quotes, 3 months.
Yeah, that wasn't 3 months ago, if anyone's wondering.
That was about 6 years ago. So yeah, I moved in with Matt, rent free. He hooked me up. He took care of me. I had one other friend up here that I had played football with at Mount Allison, Jermaine, and so there's only 2 people I knew up here, and started doing security. It was an easy job to get, and moved up the ladder pretty quick. I had a nice job for, I guess, three years. Yeah. So I moved up to site manager. So it was one of these things, right? You start off at like entry level and making like $21 an hour. Like, okay, this is nice. And then I just saw you roll your eyes, man. It's like $21. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, entry level,
Honestly,
$21. Yeah. So yeah, then I'm working for 3 months, and I get a couple of my debts cleared up, and I'm like, oh shoot, if I stayed for another 3 months, I could finish off that. So you stay for another 3 months, and then it's like, whew, if I stayed for a year, I could clear my student loan debt.
It's like, let me just check the math on this. Yup, okay.
Yep, that checks
So
it.
they call it the golden handcuffs. It's a lot of people up in Fort McMurray, if you talk to them, they only ever came up with the intention of, putting in 6 months or a year of work. Everybody has the same story. Oh, I was only going to come up for this, and then there's a lot of opportunity up here. There was a lot of work back then, especially. So you just kind of get sucked into it. Yeah.
There you go.
It's almost like you can make the salary that you wanted, or that you always envisioned for yourself, without having to do anything. Like you can come out of high school making like $40 an hour driving truck. Like, it was so pretty crazy back then.
That's incredible.
It's nuts.
Yeah. I kind of got like, I moved up the ladder pretty quick, and then I saw opportunities, paid off all my student loan debt. I was able to buy a house in Halifax that my mom is in right now. Hi, Mom.
Shout out, Mom.
Shout out, Mom.
Shout out, Mom.
My mom was fun, man. We had I think maybe we'll get into this later, but like a lot of my job is based around my ability to be creative, and every time someone brings that up, or I have to go back to my roots, man. My mom was the most. So when I grew up, she would never throw anything away, because it was always could be used for something. So like we had this big, I don't know what you call it, like a dresser, I guess, full of arts and crafts, but it was really just toilet paper rolls that had been, just a cardboard piece, and weird pieces of magazine that it looked like garbage, but she would always, she ran a daycare in the house too, so there was always, arts and crafts things. So even like to this day, like I'll just keep weird things, and people will be like, well, can we throw this out? Well,
paper towel roll. Pretty sure that's a telescope.
It's a work of art.
See, you guys get it. But yeah, no, my mom was awesome. She was really built a good foundation for that part of my brain to be like super active my whole life.
So she would encourage that from a young age?
Oh yeah, big time. There was always games. I think that was a big part of our outdoors too, right? Like,
right.
She would always take, like, she was young. So I think she was like, her age was young, but also like her spirit was young. So we would always be out and about, like doing scavenger hunts in Halifax and running. Like if we were playing in the front yard, like a lot of the times, like she'd be out there with us. Like I can remember her doing like handsprings and flips and stuff in the front lawn when I was, not super young, like grade 7 and 8. Like she was pretty active.
I remember she was always at the games, the soccer games.
Yeah,
And
probably
always
the loudest one, eh?
Yeah. Come on, Dill!
Yeah.
She's the head
Yeah, that was
cheerleader.
perfect. She's gonna hear this. That was perfect. Yeah. No, yeah. So that was super cool part of growing up.
So I guess we'll jump into what your transition from security.
Yeah.
What did you do next, essentially?
So I had volunteered a couple times at this. I was always kind of working with youth a little, like doing. I think it maybe, again, there's been a lot of questions about this asked recently. How did you start mentoring? But I don't really know how it like started. I assume because I have younger brothers,
You were always mentoring.
Always the older brother.
yeah, like I guess the older brother thing, but I had volunteered for this organization called Some Other Solutions, a Society for Crisis Prevention. So they had like a child and youth team within their organization, and they ran like a kids summer camp. So while I was doing security, like on a couple of my days off, I would go volunteer at this summer camp. So I got to know a couple of the people, and the transition happened, I guess, a year and a half later. I had paid off my loans. I had purchased a house, and I kind of felt I felt in my heart that security wasn't the ultimate answer for my life. It wasn't my chosen career path, but it served a purpose at a time. So I started looking for jobs, and I saw this job advertised for in-school mentor. So I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I emailed them, and then I got an email back, and it happened to be the guy who I had kind of been friends with like a couple of years ago, who I had done the volunteering at the camp with. So now he had become the manager, and now he was doing the hiring. So I was like, we hadn't connected in probably a year or more, but I was like, oh yeah, TJ, like, you remember me? I used to, and he was like, oh yeah, like, so we had this thing, and he was like, yo, you're hired. So then then that was a big transition in my life. I went from, I think that year I made $100,000 doing security.
Holy smokes.
The next year I made $32,000. So
Dip in pay.
you can imagine.
Still like 65,000 a year. The average that out.
So I took a pay cut, I guess. Is what
I was trying to make you feel better.
Yeah.
But was that tough, or you felt like the right decision to make?
You know what? I think it's, I guess, okay, here's your moment of inspiration to the people.
Here we go, folks. Listen up.
I've been inspired since we tuned in.
I know, right?
That was definitely, no matter how, like, you can have all the good intentions of the world, and you can know what your heart is saying so loud, but it is extremely hard to knowingly walk away from that kind of money. But I knew I wasn't going to be happy. I was happy because I was doing these things. I was traveling. I had money to travel, see cool places. I went and did work in Africa. I went, saw South America. Like I had the ability to do these things while, I had a home in Halifax, and like it looked right, and everything was going good, and everything felt good. But I knew that wasn't going to fulfill me. That was just serving the purpose that it needed at that time. And I knew I got to my spot where I needed something else. But even with all these things, even with listening to my heart, it still was a little hard to make that change.
Yeah,
It's
well,
money.
a
Money
lot of
talks,
money.
man.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. It's not like $100 and $30.
But when you make that kind of decision, when you end up making that decision, you know it has to be for, if you can trump money like that, right? If you can say no to 68,000, that kind of solidifies
That's true.
the decision you made. Now I'm not trying to put a thought in your head, but I mean,
No,
is
I
that,
know exactly what you mean. Like,
Yeah.
if you can even
if you can
even-
let
even
that enter
consider
and yeah, exactly.
saying no to $68,000 and
Your
taking
heart's
it
in the
to-
right spot.
Yeah, exactly. You know that's the right the place
And
to be.
it was instant fulfillment. Like I knew I had made the right decision the minute I
Right,
walked
yeah.
in the building, and yeah, like totally. It just, you know, you have to make a lifestyle transition, obviously, but I kind of explain it like I traded time for money. You know, like I had zero time, I had zero life. Even when I'd travel, I'd go somewhere super exotic for like 4 days, or I went to China for 4 days. Like, who the heck goes to China for 4 days?
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you can have all the money in the world, if you don't have any time to spend it or experience.
You're working 2 weeks at a time, like 2 weeks on, 1 week off, like that kind of schedule.
Yeah.
So it,
Damn.
yeah. So I had no time or life, or, but now all of a sudden I had, you know, tons of time and not tons of money. But everything I was doing mattered so much, and I instantly, like, you know, I get thrown into the school with all these impressionable kids, and that's like, you know,
Starts to matter, right?
yeah. You go home every day, you feel like you did something. Like,
When you transitioned, did your perspective kind of change from I'm no longer looking at, well, I work 2 weeks and I vacation a week. Now it's just my life. I wouldn't consider vacationing away from my career because it's so important to me. I don't want to take a break from that.
absolutely. And I do think work life balance like has a place and is important, but like you said, it becomes like, even when I was last week I was in Florida and New York, and I was still like, I had, you know,
Still vacationing then.
I was messaging the kids, and I was
Yeah.
like, I had things I was still doing, but it wasn't in a way that, you know, like you said, it wasn't in a way that like I have to do this. It's just like I genuinely, oh, like I knew you had the thing this day. Like, how did it go? Like, I just really want to know. Like, you know, I'm still
You
talking to the
want.
kids, and I'm still doing. Now, sometimes, you know, in the field I work in, you do deal with heavy stuff, and sometimes you need to give yourself a break in certain
Yeah.
situations. Like, that's part of it too. But you know, at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's like every moment you're just enjoying life, and you don't think about it, like you said, like, oh, work, or I work 2 weeks, or blah blah blah. Yeah.
When it becomes that shift, right? And you've alluded to it now already, but when it sort of affects you differently, where the money isn't necessarily the number one factor, it becomes more of a need versus want. You know, I need to get away, as opposed to I just want to get away. Like, I'm happy and I'm content in my situation. Like,
Yeah.
I think that speaks to kind of your overall shift, right?
Totally.
Yeah, you've definitely taken on a new lifestyle, as you said, right? So
Yeah, and I think when you're just like, you're acting more with purpose, and
Yeah.
in your, like, maybe it's cliche, but you hear people talk about like how much of your life you spend at work. If you're doing something you don't like naturally that's gonna affect your mood and your mental health. And, you know, if you hate your job, that's a lot of your life you hate, which is a sad reality for a lot of people. So yeah, you just find a new energy when you're doing something that you care about that much, where it doesn't wear on you the same way.
absolutely, I couldn't have said it better.
Definitely, no question. I find you can, like you said, you find that you're capable of doing so much more. I find you're able to like get in the zone, similar to sports.
It speaks to the time too, right? Like you take time is so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But yeah, just I mean when you have something that means so much more to you, you can get that much more out of yourself for that cause, as opposed to
Energy.
yeah, that energy.
Bring that energy.
Yeah, and I think like not in everyone's profession, but definitely in mine and yours too. The the more like energy you can create will only make the product better, right? Like if you got a lot of
Absolutely.
things on your mind and if you got problems going on at home and you didn't eat or sleep right, like that's only going to negatively affect this interaction between us. So that's the same way with me and the kids. So it kind of forces you almost to be your better self, and then that just creates like a positive cycle because you're your best, and then the kids they're their best, and then the cycle continues. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. So you had the switch out of security into the mentoring position, and were you playing football at all at that time, or had you been looking into joining an organization?
At that time, there's a there's a league in Canada. It's titled under a semi-pro league, and Fort McMurray had just started a team that
Fancy that.
year. Fort McMurray Monarchs.
The Monarchs.
The Monarchs. So that was their debut season, and I had at that point I had kind of I didn't have any interest in playing in that type of league. If I played, I wanted to go back to CIS. But at that time, okay, I guess we didn't talk about that. The rule changed, so now I was too old to play. So it used to be an unlimited age, and then they capped it. So I was no longer eligible to play football. So that was kind of like a shot that I wasn't expecting. And so, anyways, they convinced me to play. So I said I'd suit up for a couple of games and maybe do a little coaching just to get the guys like caught up. And anyways, it ended up being way more competitive than I thought, and I had I had a lot of fun the first season. So it was actually it was almost like a developmental league where you get like guys who had just got cut from the CFL or had just finished up and they played like youth sports and they had just finished, so they were still trying to get a shot in the league. So
they're quite a high level.
yeah, I retired now, but the shout out to the Fort McMurray Monarchs. We had a lot of success. We did win a national championship the year the fire happened, which was super cool. That was our first national championship that we ever won. It was the fire happened. The Edmonton Eskimos let us borrow their jerseys. Stampeders sent up some helmets, and the Rough Riders sent some gear. So we had all mismatching green helmets and red helmets and Eskimos jerseys and different
Really?
pants. And yeah, it was crazy. And then we ended up getting to play the national championship game back in our stadium. After the fire, everyone came back. We had like 2,000 people in attendance. Like it was unbelievable. It was really cool.
That's really cool.
That sounds
That's a
unreal.
big moment.
A special moment, Fort McMurray football history. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So also at this time, I just started coaching football in town. They jumped on me pretty quick. Kwame jumped on me and asked me to coach. He actually asked me to coach the year before, but I didn't want to commit while I was still working in the rural areas because I didn't want to be a part-time coach. So Kwame asked me to coach, so now I'm coaching. Pretty much just rushed into everything as soon as I left. Started off with a bang. And University of Alberta was going to come up and do a football camp. So they contacted Kwame because he was a phys ed teacher at one of the high schools. And Kwame had just finished up a stint with the Argos, and now he was working as a phys ed teacher. So he was still kind of like looking at the CFL.
Did he play for the Monarchs? Is it how you met?
He played at St. FX, and then he played the first year of and the second year of Monarchs with me. Yeah. Yeah, so they contacted him and said, "Hey, we're interested in doing a football camp in Fort McMurray. If you could help get it organized." So Kwame was like, "Yeah, sure, we'll help out." So, anyways, he started getting the ball rolling, and we had built interest, and then they pulled out. So he told me, he was like, "Yeah, they decided they're not coming. Whatever, whatever." I say, "Yo, why don't we just do a camp? We can probably do it better than them. They're gonna bring up a couple rookie, you know, kids who probably haven't been playing football as long as us, and they're gonna, promote the heck out of it and charge everyone, $1 million to participate. Why don't we just
Yeah.
do it ourselves?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's a good idea." I mean, we both played football for a long time. We know his entire wedding party played in the CFL or NFL, so he had like a big
Okay,
reach.
so he knows the game.
So we decide we're just gonna do a football camp, 2-day football camp. Kind of try to build football in the city because at that point it wasn't like it was a hockey town, right? So we're trying to build interest by bringing up a couple pro athletes, giving out some cool gear, getting people excited about football. So that was all it was supposed to be. Then that's how Northern Elite was born. We decided to be a non-for-profit because we really there's a lot of money grabs out there. There's a lot of, you know, false promises and fake football companies. And we just wanted people to know, like, this isn't about us trying to get rich. This is really just about trying to develop football in the city. So we registered as a non-for-profit, and we did that first camp, and it was a huge success. We had probably 60 kids come out, which
Wow.
was
Yeah, that's incredible.
big for the time. Then that took off in the season. Me and Kwame have a good dynamic the way we work with each other, and we ended up, people would ask us to come in and do like anti-bullying talks at their school. So we just kind of naturally were like, well, we'll just go in and do it like a football thing, like Northern Elite. But we were just doing freebies. We were just going for fun, and we bring some of our high school kids to talk to the elementary. So then this anti-bullying thing started kind of rolling, and then parents were reaching out for personal training, and then we're like, oh, I guess we could do this too. And then the second year the camp happened, and then it keeps growing. So
Yeah.
it's I can't even really put a title on what Northern Elite is anymore. We ran the high school football league after this. We were part of the Alberta Bowl. We still do the anti-bullying. We just did a camp in February for Indigenous youth of the area. So First Nation, Métis, Inuit kids coming from surrounding reserves all the way to Fort McMurray. We had 60 Indigenous kids show up. With some guest speakers, First Nation speakers from the CFL. It's just been incredible how much it's grown and what we've been able to do through Northern Elite. And then getting featured, which we were lucky enough to have our logos featured on The Amazing Race Canada. We got to wear our apparel, which was super cool because it was like our heart and soul is in that, and we get to wear it on our chest on national TV. Like that was pretty cool.
Love the logo, by the way.
Yeah, it's unreal.
So yeah, that's kind of the beginning of Northern Elite football, and I guess a little bit of quick version of what it has turned into.
Did it? It's kind of cool how it started as as you said, just kind of a weekend thing, and was the turnout so good that you kind of realized that it could be more? It seemed like each step of the way, someone was like, "Hey, could you guys do this for us?" And you were like, "Well, why? Yeah, why not?
Guess we
Of
could.
course, sure."
Suppose we could.
That's honestly how it happened, and we had to learn to start saying no because
Yeah.
we were such yes men. We got overwhelmed quick. We'd have a million requests to do all these different things, and he would have said yes to 5 things, but then I said yes to 5 things, and we're like, oh, we got a lot on our plate right now. So
Just we're only
Yeah,
two
it
people.
Speaks to the character of each of you, though. I mean, you guys are obviously very approachable and willing to take on quite a bit at once. So it doesn't shock probably either Mark or I to hear that you had 10 things on the go at once and were a little overwhelmed with it all.
Yeah, I guess I we work well together. I mean, we're opposite but also very similar, if that makes sense. So we can kind of provide what the other can't, but at the same time, we're always on the same page. So we definitely have a good working relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like me and Ben.
Yeah.
Very, very much different, but also very much the same.
Yeah, we're like Mark and Ben of the football world.
You guys were there first. No, we're the Dylan and Kwame of the podcast
We're
world.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Gotta ride on someone's coattail.
Right? So as you alluded to, you guys were on the Amazing Race Canada.
Yes, we were.
How did that opportunity come to be?
Well, it was
Years
kind
of manhunt.
Yeah.
been training for this my whole life. No, it was pretty cool. We got nominated. Neither of us had ever watched the show. I don't watch TV
No.
hardly at all. Definitely don't watch reality TV. So yeah, we got an email saying someone in your community has selected you. So season 6 was Heroes Edition, and I guess given our work in the community or someone along the way thought we would be a good combo for Heroes Edition. So we got an email said you've been nominated. If you want to proceed, like submit a video to this link and blah blah blah. So we sat down on the couch, one take, just me and him just talking to the camera. We even said in the camera, we were like, we never watched the show before. I didn't even know if it was season 4 or 5 or yeah. And then we sent in the video, and step after step, they kept calling us back until boom. And it was funny because I didn't really understand the magnitude of what was happening until a lot later. Like,
Yeah.
I had obviously heard of the show, but I didn't realize it was like the number 1 most watched show in Canada. I didn't realize it had like all these awards for being like best production, best sound, like, but like it's like the show in terms of reality TV
Yeah, it really
and
is.
of just normal TV. So I went and binge watched like every season on YouTube like a month before we left, because I was like, yo, I need to know what the heck I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
what's a roadblock? I don't know these things. Like,
That's
it was so
great.
confusing.
I've never
Um,
seen an episode.
No.
No.
I watched it when it was like the U.S., like just the Amazing Race. With my mom,
I haven't had
she got
cable
me.
in,
There's
like,
like a board
10
game
years.
for it too.
Super cool. And like so honored to be chosen to be, especially on Heroes Edition. Like that was just, with military and firefighters and nurses, and there's just, you're kind of see yourself as like, oh shoot, I guess I'm in this category now. It was
Yeah.
a special moment.
We'll just do a quick little few questions on Amazing Race. I'm wondering your biggest challenge during the race.
The biggest specific challenge, or just the biggest like kind of challenge about?
Like the first thing that came to your mind when I said that.
Okay, the first thing that came. So one thing that I don't know if people always take into consideration is the traveling and the amount of time you spend on a plane, or your diet's off, you're not sleeping properly. So these things start to add up, right? So
Yeah.
we left Indonesia to Toronto. So I was like 14, 15 hours flying. We landed in Toronto, and then we had to hop in a car and find our way to Ingersoll and hit a sign-up board. So, and then while you're in race mode, you have to find your own hotel. So then we have to go find a hotel, and I guess whatever was happening in Ingersoll it was like the time of the year, so every hotel was booked up. So it took us like an hour to find a place to sleep. So I think that night we
After a
probably got like
14-hour flight. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, so I think we only got like 2 hours of sleep that night. And then we got to wake up and start the day. And then we went Ingersoll. We did a whole Stratford thing. And then at the end of Stratford, we get to the mat. It was probably like 5 o'clock. Like, we're a little bit tired, but, like, it was fine. And then we get to the mat, and you guys haven't watched it yet, but it's like it's a keep on racing, which I didn't even know this was a thing. So You get to the mat, you think it's over, and then he's like, keep on racing. I'm like, what? So now we have to drive to Toronto. We haven't eaten all day. Like, we haven't eaten yet. So we drive to Toronto, and then we do a whole other leg. And anyways, there's this part where we're in this club, this nightclub called El Convito Rico, and we have to do this sexy dance. It's a sexy dance in like a gay nightclub. And we're in the basement, and they packed it with like fans, like people, because they want the crowd to like, you know, give the response. The crowd kind of decides whether you pass or lose based on the crowd's response.
Right.
So there's a lot of people down there. It's so hot, and at this point, like, we've probably done like 2 challenges, I think, leading up to this one. So, you know, 14-hour flight, 2 hours sleep, no food. We were really bad on drinking water, and now it's like 7 o'clock at night, and we have to memorize this like 3-minute dance routine in like a hot basement. That I remember that being a point for me and Kwame, because we were both on the same, and we had already tried it and failed, and now we're with our instructor trying to learn the steps again. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, bro, yo, I'm bust. He's like, that was like the moment where I was like, holy, like, I gotta dig deep right now. Like, I could have went to sleep on that floor right there. Like, if you told me like, yo, everyone gets 10-minute break, yo, I could have fell asleep instantly. Like, I was so tired, so thirsty, trying to memorize these dance moves, trying to shake my booty. It was a
That's
thing,
the easiest part, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what you think, not how these guys want you to shake it. This is a whole different shake I didn't know if I had, but anyways,
that's
we
great.
dug deep, we pulled it out, but that was like, after that leg, that was, I think we didn't get to the mat till like 11 o'clock at night, so that was like the longest day, the longest time. That was the one that tested me, you know? That was the one.
Yeah.
That was the biggest challenge for sure.
You ended up finishing 3rd, and
Spoiler alert.
Yep, spoiler alert if anyone hasn't seen it. And if you haven't, what the hell's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. What was the coolest experience that you took from all of that?
I guess if we're going, first thing that came to mind, the Yukon, Dawson City. I mean, there was a lot of cool parts about like just being on the show, but in terms of just like what I saw or experienced, like, Dawson City was so cool. And obviously I know, like, I've heard of Dawson City and Yukon, but to go there to experience it's like a time warp, man. Like, everything's still as it was, and they kind of set it up that way too. So they preserve like the buildings of how they were built back in the gold rush, and there's just a lot of history. And just walking around the town, like, it was like you were back in time. It was unbelievable. And it's somewhere I would never think to go. Like, if I'm in Fort McMurray, I'm not gonna book a vacation to Dawson City. It's just something that would never cross my mind. Having gone there now,
it's really cool.
You've been?
No, I'm joking. I was playing off what you were saying. It sounds unreal.
Now that I've gone, I would
gold
love
mine.
to go back and spend more time there. And I encourage anyone listening, like, sounds wacky, but if you just check it out, man.
Dawson City in the Yukon.
It was super cool.
Sounds intriguing.
We've kind of worked our way through the journey.
Oh, well, I guess I'll just finish the journey by ending off of Fort McKay, because I got to give them some love.
Absolutely.
So I saw a need for sports in elementary schools. That was like a big thing I noticed while I was working in the schools. So I developed this after-school sports program, which I ended up finding funding for. Like, TELUS gave us like $10,000 to run it in multiple schools. And one of the places I wanted to offer, shout out to TELUS, big time. So one of the places I wanted to offer it was a place called Fort McKay, which was an hour north of Fort McMurray. It was a First Nations reserve. So I drove up there and kind of told them about the program, and they were into it. So they ended up, I would go up there once a week. So I guess for about a year and a half or 2 years, I was going up like once a week to this little community. And last year, they called me, and you know, the kids up there, they see a lot of programs come and go, and I'll say maybe it's harder to build trust with those kids because given the nature of on reserve life, like it's a little more isolated. Sometimes it's harder to deal with the problems you see. There's like a high turnover, so you could get a really good person out there who might not last. You hear these stories a lot about, I think especially in northern Ontario, there's really isolated communities that they find it's hard, like retention's hard. Um, so I've been going there. Yeah, yeah. So I've been going there for a year or two, and you know, I really developed a relationship with the kids, and I guess someone in the community recognized that. And anyways, they offered me like a full-time position to work at the youth center. So what they have is a youth center there for the kids to go like after school. So they'll go to school, and then after school, if they don't want to go home, you know, we have a whole center built. We give them supper, do homework, games, music, art, like anything you can imagine. So the position was to work there, and I jumped all over it. So I started there full time in last February. I guess it's been a year there. I've been there full time. It was actually funny. I started there in February, and then in March I had to go to my new boss who just hired me and said, "Hey, so I'm gonna need to take 2 months off." I can't tell you why, but
Yeah.
could be a cool TV show. You might.
You never know. I'm sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So now that's where I am full time. I'm the Youth Mentorship Coordinator at Fort McKay First Nation.
That's amazing, man. That's so cool.
That is awesome.
Really, really nice to see that you found yourself in a position like that after, you know, working your way up in various spots in Fort McMurray and surrounding area. I mean, this, after getting to know you in the last hour and 45, I mean, this sounds to me like it's exactly where you would picture yourself or where you would want to be. Am I close?
Man, it's beautiful. Like I've never been happier, and I really like.
You look great.
Love the beard.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, like I couldn't, like you said, like it's right where I want to be, and it has been a journey, and even just talking to you guys and kind of taking me back through everything, it's I really encourage people to lead with their hearts, and I think that's something people say but don't always understand or stay true to. But I think if you really dumb down the noise of what you should be doing or what you ought to be doing or what expectations say you should be doing or what's the smart decision, if you can quiet all those external voices down and really just try to listen to what your heart is telling you, it usually has a little bit of a compass that's guiding you. And this is a practice that I've really been trying to work on the last couple of years, because I think we get kind of overcrowded with different things. Society pressures us and pulls us in a lot of different directions, and it's sometimes easier to fall into these traps, but there really is like something calling you or something pushing you, and I don't know if the more you don't listen to that voice, the quieter it gets, if that makes sense. So I'm fortunate enough to have been, you know, through everything I went through in my life to end up here, and like my journey's not over. I'll tell this same story that we just told in 10 years, and it'll look totally different. You know,
I'm brand new view.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we were saying we're definitely going to get you as a repeat guest in like a year or something.
Yeah, that'd
Maybe
be
not
cool.
even a year.
Where are they now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, did you always kind of have an idea that your eventual career would be centered around helping others?
It's funny you asked that, because I did and I didn't. What I always wanted was not actually what I always wanted, and I think that's another thing people do. They see someone else doing something cool and think that's what they want, but that's not actually what they want. It's a piece of what they want. So I always wanted to be a pro athlete, but every time I envisioned myself as a pro athlete, it was always like, I'd be able to go into the community and I'd be like, 'cause it's a weird, famous thing where you can say the same thing as their mom said, but they'll listen to you over their mom just because you have some kind of
Yeah.
Leverage. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
Well, mom's not putting up 110.
So yeah, I always wanted to be a pro athlete, but it was only for the reasons that I wanted to do like that community work. And that was kind of always like, obviously you imagine the touchdowns, but I also always had that part into it. And it wasn't until later I was playing for this Fort McMurray team, and like to the kids in the elementary, like there's no difference between the New England Patriots and the Fort McMurray Monarchs. You walk into school with a football jersey, you're a football player, So I kind of realized in that moment, I was like, oh, this is what I always wanted. It wasn't how I thought it was going to be, but it's still what I always pictured in my head. So I would go give bully talks to like school assemblies and do stuff like that as like the football player. And then I kind of had one of these out of body moments, just like watching myself talk to these kids wearing a football jersey with my name on the back, like, oh, this is what you thought you were going to do. It's kind of cool.
That is really cool. I'd almost want to go back to that out of body experience. Can you take us there?
Yeah, I have a lot of those actually.
Samesies.
It's one time my teacher told me like sometimes you get into a flow, and I know you guys, or you said it when you said when you're playing sports and you're in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I find I can do that now with things. And a yoga teacher said it to me once. Like sometimes it's not always as if you're doing the work. It's just kind of like you're on autopilot, and like magical things are just like happening, and you're saying the right things and doing the right things. And in sports, it's like you're not thinking, you're just living in the moment. I guess it's being like super present. Like You're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're not like, even right now we're just having a conversation, and like sometimes you have a conversation with people and you're super not present. You're constantly like your mind's everywhere, and sometimes it's just flowing perfectly. And
I think
Nike said it best. Just do it.
Just do it. Well, I think that's when your entire body is on the same page. Like sometimes your mind can be in somewhere else, and your body is prepared to do something, or vice versa. But when you have your body,
that's a good word,
and mind, ready to go, that's when you can enter that stage of flow.
Totally. And like this will happen like with the kids too. Like sometimes you got to deal with situations that I'll say are beyond my capacity, or beyond like their capacity to even live this. And you just I'm not gonna call it God or the creator or energy, life force, universe. Like I don't really know a label for myself, but
whatever
sometimes
it may be.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm just getting like an extra boost from somewhere where I don't feel like I can handle this situation, but I am handling it, but because something is helping me, if that makes sense.
Higher power.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Oh yeah, that energy, baby.
When you said actually earlier, when you ignore that voice from like the universe, that voice gets quieter and quieter. On the other hand, if you don't ignore that voice becomes almost a hand pushing you in the right direction, the direction you're supposed to be heading. It almost opens doors for you.
Feeds what you want to grow.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
that's facts.
I love that.
Took me
I'm gonna quote that one. Can I quote that?
Of course.
We've
Everything
got
on
it
Brand New
recorded.
View is all quotable. We hold no copyright to anything we say. So I think we could probably get a little day in the life. Are you a little bit different every day, or do you have a general structure from day to day?
Day in the life. I do have a general structure, but it's also very different every day. So my morning usually looks like a wake up, I'll give a couple tips if your listeners are interested in tips. I put my phone on airplane mode every night because I don't want to. Usually, the first thing you do when you wake up, because people don't use alarm clocks anymore, unless you own one, then great. But I usually check the time. I put my phone on airplane mode, and I like to get a good morning before I see all the emails and texts and social media. And so I wake up, I'll usually make a tea, I'll sit down, just kind of take in the morning, just really breathe in the morning, look at the sky, like enjoy that part of life with no sounds, nothing but your hot tea and my cats. Then I'll get a little stretch because that's important. I'll make breakfast. I'll do a little morning meditation, and then boom, now I'm ready to start the day. So turn my phone on, get the barrage of emails, and usually answer emails, do some work. Like usually I have Northern Elite work or Ravens or some sort of work that's not pertaining to my job, or sometimes my job, but something I'm enjoying doing. And then I'll go to the gym, and then I'll make lunch. So that's like my morning, which is nice. And then I usually leave for work around 12. Now, once I get to work, I'm in the youth center. The kids have to be over 12, so anywhere from 12 to 18. And we can average like anywhere from 25 to 30 kids a night. So that part of my job is totally, you got to feel what's going on. If it's a day where, let's go play basketball at the park. If it's a day like, let's go in the studio and record some music. But you got to feel the kids, right? You can't go in there with a plan or an expectation because you'll just get frustrated. So I'll make like a loose plan, or I'll have a bunch of things in my back pocket that I can pull out. But usually it's see how many kids show up, see who shows up, feel the energy, read the energy, decide what we're going to do that night, and just make it fun, positive environment every time.
There you go. Do you use that? Do you kind of approach your practices that way?
Yes and no. I mean, we have an app that the kids can tell us beforehand if they're coming or not. So we'll have an understanding of how many numbers we're working with generally. So we'll tailor practice plans around how many kids are going to be there. But the off chance that we have low numbers like today, spring break, kids are on March break, we just scrimmage with them, or we have 20, 30 drills that we can rifle through.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about. If you had a practice plan and only 3 kids showed up and you still tried to do the same thing you planned for 20, that's
pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, why not?
Sorry. No, we go with the flow. I mean, we try our best just to get them sweating. As long as they're having fun, sweating, forgetting that they're there. Not forgetting that they're there, but, nothing else is bothering them. They're just able to enjoy the moment.
Being present.
Being present. Just
trying. Sorry, interrupted your day in the life.
Sorry.
No, that's what it's about. You just said it right there. You played like your 3-on-3 today because that's what you felt was necessary to have fun, and that's what you just said right there is really what it's all about, and that's what I do every day. You just got to read it and do it, and that can look 100 different ways, and that's really where you got to be creative, and you got to have. And I know not everyone has the mind for that. Like there's people who are very structured and need like a plan, and those just aren't people who should do this job because there's a lot of jobs that I could never do. So it's a lot of fun. Like I'm a big kid myself, and I really just I understand the plan before, but during execution, like it's really full. You gotta be all in. Like when I'm playing man tracker, I'm playing it to win. I'm playing it to play man tracker. If I'm being hunted, no way. Like I'll dive under a tree and cover myself in dirt so no one see. Like you know what I mean? Like you gotta be all in.
Oh yeah.
But the kids know that, right? They recognize that. Kids are they'll pick up authenticity quicker than anyone. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah.
Their
kids
shit
have
filters.
A great bullshit meter.
Oh.
So right now football season just started. So I'll do this is like a weekend thing for me. So I'll just take a couple of the kids. Like we've been able to have some major kids come out of Fort McMurray, doing some like we just had a kid at St. FX there who was the number one rusher in the country. Played here for the Knights in Fort McMurray. We had a kid go to UBC. He's playing right now. We just had a kid go full ride to Princeton University. We have another kid down in prep school in the States. So we're pumping out like serious athletes.
You're getting some prestige going.
Yeah, big time. It's exciting. So now the other kids behind them are seeing this, right? And they're like, oh shoot, this is possible. So every year it grows. So now, this year we have a couple kids who have already committed to Langley Rams, the place I was telling you I played earlier.
Right.
We have a kid going to St. FX. So it's kind of like extra training. Like it's good for me and Kwame. Like we get in our cardio too, but then the kids get to train with us and kind of push them to that, just so they know what to expect at a higher level, right? And the kids who want it show up. So we have a nice little group of 10 kids will show up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning to get in the work. It's beautiful.
Gotta
I
love
like
that.
commitment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I envy that commitment.
It's awesome.
So I feel like we've got a really sound base as to where you've been, but I'd love to hear where you're headed.
Whew, the $1 million question. I really love being out in Mackay. The Amazing Race stuff was super cool, but it really gave me an understanding maybe of myself and just being put on a national stage, and then obviously living in a smaller town, you kind of get known, and even just going to the grocery store, like people come up and be like, "Oh, hey, can I get a picture?" And so that's definitely like, it's cool, but at the same time, like I kind of rethought my, what if I was an NFL player? Like, would I really love that part of it as much? Probably not. So I don't know if that's what propelled me, or I'm just really enjoying my time out. But I love the kids out there in Mackay, and we're building something really cool. So I got a youth council started. I got kids starting their own clothing companies. I'm currently working on getting a cafe going. I got 10 kids playing football who never played football before, who are doing really well. So there's all these small successes, and I think in terms of like that, I'm really content just staying out there and kind of working on these smaller projects and building up this. I got a great group who's like 13, 14, 15 right now who are super engaged. So I think like if I can get them, in the next couple of years, like really going in a right direction with building something beautiful, like that'll, like the kids behind them will just fall in line. So yeah, I feel like I've really made an impact since I've been there, and like the future plans I have are just awesome for out there. In terms of Northern Elite, we've been getting a lot of people reaching out from around the country to do camps in other parts of the country. So we might kind of tinker with that idea with branching out during the summer, maybe pumping out one in Halifax. I know Kelowna, Edmonton, Calgary, like all these places have showed a lot of interest. So that's something we're looking at for this summer too. But yeah, the cool thing is that I've gotten to a point now, excuse me, where I just feel like I listened to this interview with Matthew McConaughey, and he was talking about how he's gotten to a point in his acting career where he doesn't just have to take jobs just to take them. Like he only does exactly what he wants to do. And I feel like I've gotten to a cool point in my career where that's me. Like I only do what I want to do. Like I don't have to say yes to these things just because it might lead to a new opportunity, or it might, like if I really feel in my heart like this is something I want to do, then I'll do it. But if it doesn't really fit with what I'm doing, then I'll pass. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of just talked for a bit.
Oh, that was exactly
Definitely answered.
I think that's what we were looking for. Yeah,
That was it. That was that brand new view.
absolutely. That was fantastic.
That was the brand new view.
Oh, he snuck it in there.
I know.
And
I didn't.
think-
I didn't do it as much as Dorico, but
Dorico was hilarious. That was great. A brand new view.
yeah, yeah. You got to get him on the intro, eh? A brand new view.
We should actually just change the intro and have that coming in with it. It's a brand new view. Do, do, do.
And we're back.
And we're back. All right.
Actually, we're on our way out.
we are on our way out. I think we'll take that time to wrap things up. What do you think, Ben? I think we got it all covered. Dylan, you're incredible.
Yeah, Doug.
I want to say thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us from the other side of the country.
Yeah, really nice storytelling. All I was going to say was, there was nothing we really needed to dive into further or feel like we have unsaid.
I think we got it all covered.
That covered it all. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's an awesome thing you're doing. I love to see some of the old family doing good things. You know, it's
Right, it's
awesome
super
to
for
touch base with you again.
I know, right? Like this is, without this wouldn't happen. So it's really cool to catch up with you almost pretty much a decade later.
Yeah.
And
Wild.
if maybe Northern Elite will host a camp in Halifax someday. You never know.
Hey,
You going up for running back?
that's the plan. You
Mine.
guys are more than welcome to show up if we do.
Love it. We'll set up a little podcast. We'll do a
Live show.
football podcast or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, once again, Dylan, thanks so much. Hope to see you sometime soon. Who knows? I don't know if I'm going to be out in Fort Mac, but maybe you'll be in Halifax in the near future.
I thought you were stopping
Like-
on your way to Yellowstone.
Barely make it to Halifax, but if you guys are ever in northern Alberta, definitely hit me up.
We will definitely do
Definitely.
so. All right. Well, I think we'll end it there for a brand new view. I'm Mark Boudreau.
I'm Ben Bramer.
See you next week, folks.
Cheers.
I was the same old me with the same old blues, with the same old blues, with the same old blues. I was the same